In this part of the course, we are dealing with problem framing in relation to sustainability. This is in line again with Green Competencies Framework. So, problem framing we can kind of characterize like process of identifying actual or potential sustainability problems. So there are different types of problems or different levels of those problems. As we see on this scheme, this figure, uh, experts distinguish four types of problems related to sustainability. They are straightforward, either manageable or formidable or wicked problems. So the straightforward problems are, for instance, lack in drinking water, illiteracy. Then formidable problems are, for instance, childhood obesity. Manageable problems is like human suffering. Wicked problems are, for instance, sustainable well-being, which is like really more kind of difficult to handle and to solve such problems. So these wicked problems are kind of resistant to so-called taming. They must be coped with, for instance. So, of course, it is important to understand this distinction between different types of problems, because then it can help us to solve those problems or how to approach the solutions. So this problem framing related to these types of problems defines what is challenging about a given situation and identifies the best action to address it. So sustainability problems are very often complex and cannot be solved so easily. But there can be some appropriate steps that can help us to anticipate or prevent them, or to mitigate and adapt to them if it's already existing problem. So when we are skillful with this problem framing, we can identify situations and frame them as a current or potential problem in a given context. So this of course requires like critical understanding of socio-ecological systems. So not just like nature, but also relation to human society. Problem framing can help us contextualize them and define those sustainability problems in a given geographical or temporal context. That means like in given like space and time. So in given like let's say region and given period of time. So for instance, decline of bees and other pollinating insects can be, for instance, framed as a problem related to food production security, requiring technical solutions in terms of agricultural management, which is related to SDG 12, as opposed to a problem with maintaining the renewal of nature threatened by the overuse of its resources. So if we want to see also some examples of those four types of problems that we mentioned in relation to sustainability, like more concrete examples. So if we take like straightforward problems, they are like well-defined, clear solutions, and these problems have clear causes and solutions that can be implemented without significant opposition or complexity. So for example, single-use plastic waste. We know that the problem is excessive plastic consumption that leads to pollution. So we can make solution like implementing bans, promote reusable alternatives, and improve recycling infrastructure. Another example is, for instance, energy waste in buildings. So it is also like that we have problem that there is like poor insulations of building, and that leads to like overconsumption of energy for heating or cooling. So what can be solution? Of course, improving building standards, installing better insulation, and use energy efficient appliances. When we take the second type of problems, manageable problems, they are complex but solvable with effort. So they are not so straightforward like those before, but there is still possible kind of solution, but it requires greater effort. So these problems required significant resources and cooperation, but we have clear strategies for improvement. So for instance, transitioning to renewable energy, like there is problem like let's say with fossil fuels which dominate energy system due to infrastructure and economical dependencies. So we can solve it in investing in renewable energy such as solar or wind energy, and provide incentives for clean energy adoption. Then there is another example, let's say fast fashion and textile waste. So the problem is that the fashion industry is producing very large amounts of waste and pollution, and we can solve it in encouraging circular fashion, sustainable production, and consumer awareness. So we can promote ways how to not to buy so much fashion that is fast fashion that lasts only few months or up to let's say 1 year, but we promote like let's say reusing or sharing different for instance clothes and so on. Then the third type is formidable problems. They are highly complex and they require long-term effort. So these problems involve multiple stakeholders, economic systems, and deeply rooted behaviors, which make them hard to solve quickly. So those like straightforward problems are like really more clear and easier to solve, and these formidable problems are way more complex. So let's say example would be overconsumption and resource depletion. So for instance, economic growth models rely nowadays on continuous consumption, which trains planetary boundaries. So there is this overconsumption, which we also mentioned in the previous parts of the course, especially for so-called like developed North countries. And the solution would be shift to circular economies, which is also one part of the course, and another our colleague is speaking about circular economy. Another solution is also promoting minimalism, like to live with less and not to overconsume and to buy unnecessary things, which was also related, for instance, to the idea that we mentioned about the ecocentrism, deep ecology, and other also movements and approaches in environmental ethics. Also, the solution would be to change consumer behavior, but it is also, as you can understand or you can imagine, it is not so easy to just like let's say make one campaign and that will change the behavior just in one week, let's say, or 1 year. So it is very long-term effort to change the habits and the kind of like way of uh, thinking and acting of consumers. So there are various ways, like for instance those nudges, or let's say role models that can influence our different types of marketing, which can kind of influence our behavior. Then another problem is, for instance, environmental justice. Like as I mentioned also in the previous parts of the course, this is also like the sustainability issues are not only between like human beings and natural environment, but also there are problems between human beings in different parts of the earth or on different regions and so on. So for instance, pollution affecting low income communities. So this is example of this environmental injustice. So the problem is that marginalized communities bear the brunt of industrial pollution and climate impacts. So I also mentioned it in one of my uh, published texts, this problem of kind of like environmental injustice related to environmental burdens. The solution would be to implement stronger environmental regulations, ensure fair resource distribution, and empower affected communities. So, uh, really, to like what I also mentioned, for instance, in those one of my texts, there is like based on other authors, also important this kind of participative justice, like to be able to participate, to empower the affected communities so they can also contribute to decision making affecting their life and their well-being. Then fourth type of the problems is wicked problems. So they have no clear solution, deeply they are interconnected issues. So it is like the most complex type of environmental problems or problems related to sustainability. So they are often involving not just social but economical and environmental conflicts with no single right answer, or it is very difficult to find just one solution and so on. So they are related also to what we mentioned, to many like moral dilemmas, and it is then important to also in relation to what we mentioned about this logical argumentation, it is important to think about the best solution from the like critical thinking point of view, and trying to find the best possible answer, the best possible solution. So what are the examples? Like for instance, climate change. Like you can, from the first side, like you see that it is very complex global problem. It is like so global systematic issue driven by economic models, energy consumption, and also politics. So because we know that political decisions are very much influencing how the climate change is handled, and whether they are like really like national or very like we have big countries who are like very key playing key role in this climate change. So and it depends on the current politicians how they handle also those situations, whether they ignore it or they also get kind of involved with the people lobbying for financial reasons, and then they are overlooking the real problem. So this challenge is like it requires global cooperation, policy changes, lifestyle shifts, and technological innovation without a universally accepted solution. Another example of this wicked problem is balancing economic growth with sustainability. So this really we cannot maybe stop some kind of producing at all, but we have to really balance it with sustainability. So many economies depend on continuous growth, which contradicts sustainability principles. But of course, as we said, it is possible, as we said in relation to previous issues, like it is possible to a little bit like kind of decrease the consumption and so on. But obviously, it would be very difficult to totally stop any economical production, and it wouldn't be really like imaginable. So the challenge is literally finding a way to maintain well-being without over exploiting resources, and that's really like kind of a very complex approach. We have to really adopt very complex approach to that solution. So however, these problems are weak problems. That means that their best solution would be to adopt like interdisciplinary teams and handle them from like philosophical, ethical, but also economical, sociological, environmental, and so on perspectives, and to try to find the best possible solutions. So as we mentioned in that, for instance, logical argumentation, it is, or in the logical, when we were mentioning the logical fallacies, that the solution is not 100% perfect doesn't mean that it's not helping at all. So this is like also, I think, related to many of these complex problems, like for instance these wicked problems, that we shouldn't like take it like, okay, the solution is very difficult to achieve and very complex, so we should give up. So no, this is probably not the best approach. Okay, so this was a presentation about the problems related to sustainability and the kind of approach of problem framing, which you can apply to different problems. You can try for yourself to imagine different other problems related to sustainability and try to imagine whether you would put them in which category of problems.